Have you ever known someone firmly planted in their career and then one day you hear they're doing something completely different? Well, today's guest follows that model, and I'm so excited to share her story with you. Doree O'Neal is an author, motivational speaker, a certified hypnotherapist, and a sought-after transformation coach. She spent the last 25 years in the software industry before pursuing this passion as a coach. She helps young adults to unlock their full potential and to cultivate a life filled with purpose. So, Doree, we've been talking about this for a while. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
All right. So many podcasts will start out with, tell me your story, but I'm going to take a little bit different approach. You wrote this book called Seriously, How I Went from a Hot Mess to a Daring Badass. I want to know, tell me what's behind that.
Well, going on 12 years ago, actually October of 2024 will be 12 years, I got sober. I decided that it was time to make changes in my life, and I gave up alcohol. And this book is all about the journey of sobriety, the humbling effect it is when you realize that something is so spiraled so far out of control that you need help. And that was a huge, huge turning point for me because I thought I had everything in control. So this story is about that particular moment when I had to go to my boss and say, I need to take a leave of absence, and all of the different things that I learned along the way. And a huge one for me was actually trusting other human beings, particularly women. So that's really what it's about. It's about that transformation of being able to step away from something that had become a crutch and had been something that I relied on for everything as far as being a social person, about when I was sad, when I was happy, all of those different things, and being able to find different ways of expressing those feelings and dealing with them besides turning to drinking.
You know, and you certainly are not alone in this story. We are a population that is consumed with self-soothing through different types of addictions, whether it's addiction to alcohol, pornography, shopping, work, these things that we do to escape the feelings. So you said something I want to go back and pick up on, that you were having a hard time trusting particularly other women. Now, I know there are, and we're brought up this way. We're brought up that women are put in a position where we are felt like we need to compete with other women. So unpack that a little bit. How did you come to that realization?
Well, part of it for me was the fact that growing into this sober living, one of the things that they pointed me to was group with your women. Find people that you have in common and learn how to pick up the phone and start reaching out to them and being able to let go of those pieces. And I worked a 12-step program, and I know there's a lot of different programs out there for people. There's so many, actually. It's wonderful that you have an option of what you choose with. But for me, it was about finding a sober woman who could guide me through the process and being able to open up to her and say, this is me. And really, the secrets that I had, all of the dark things I considered to be ugly about me, and being able to say, this is who I am, this is what I've done. And for her to just embrace me and say, it's okay. It's absolutely okay. And so that was a really big part of that for me, was being able to do that. Because you're right, as women, for some reason, there's always this competition that people try to, when you're even a little girl. I can remember, and no fault to my mother, but I can remember her pointing to a little girl. I struggled with my weight as a little kid. And my mother pointing to a little girl who was thin and trim and just saying, look how pretty she is. Look how everybody adores her. Look how cute, look, her clothes fit differently than yours. And knowing that I had to go into, and they called it the husky back then, the husky size, and have like this much taken off the bottom because I'm short and I was always short. But it kind of instilled that thing of, oh, they're better than me. And if someone is better than me, or I'm in competition with someone, well, they're not to be trusted. And then later on, because of my behaviors, I realized I wasn't to be trusted. So I knew that if you couldn't trust me, I definitely couldn't trust you. And so it was a journey of really being able to trust other human beings, but particularly women.
Yeah. And what you bring out is something that happens to all of us. We get some type of comment from a person who we respect, we love, who is in authority of us, whether it's a parent, whether it's a teacher, who makes one comment. And that comment can live with you for the rest of your life. It's how you end up showing in your identity. But, we've been doing a series about reinvention. So today I wanted to bring you on and talk a little bit about your reinvention story. You are a software engineer and have been in that industry for quite some time. Tell us how you went about making this, what I call a whiplash career move. Now, I'm not saying that you've totally gone into the different space, but it's very common for people to be still working in corporate, starting a side gig, and how do you manage both? How do you make that transition? So tell me a little bit about how you started to even consider doing something different than software engineer.
For me, it was, I always say that there's been some pivotal moments in my life where I realized that something had to change. For me, it's kind of cyclical. It's like all of a sudden I feel this unrest and this feeling of there's something that's not sitting well with me, or my emotions tell the tale, I guess, is one thing to kind of look at. My emotions always tell me that it's time for something different to happen. And for me, I was at a great corporate job, loved my boss, loved the majority of the people I was working with, and I was crying all the time. And even the little things that I was doing were upsetting to me. And I'm thinking, I've got this wonderful, I have a beautiful home. I had just gotten married to this guy that's so nice. And then, having twin stepdaughters, which I'd always wanted a family. So I had everything. What was wrong with me? What was wrong? And I decided that it was time to do something different. And for me, in this particular instance, it was, I need a coach. And it was my first time ever hiring a coach. And we walked through her different, steps. And we determined that it wasn't necessarily, because I went to her saying, help me fix myself in this job. Help me to make me happy in this job so that I can stay here forever and retire. And as we started halfway through, it was oh man, no, it's not. This isn't my path anymore. And I needed to really determine what my purpose was and my passion. And I've always wanted to help people. I've always been someone that likes to listen and try to dig in and help people. And part of that discovery was, okay, you're a coach. And for a long time I was like, no, I don't want to be a coach. I don't want to be a coach because it seemed a little daunting. And I didn't know, always as coaches worry about, do I have enough credentials? Do I have enough training? All of those different things. And what I had to really start looking at was, let me tap into my life experiences while I was getting some of those trainings. And, so thus it began, and it's been, it's taught me a lot about balance when you're in corporate and working your way out, patience, and really, really trusting that timing is not on my time. Timing is on when everything starts to align and starts to work out, and the scale starts tipping a little bit more, where it goes, oh, I really can make something of this.
Yes. So in respect to what you're doing today, as we look at this transformational coach role, what is it that breaks your heart, and what's the big problem you're trying to solve as a result?
For me, what breaks my heart is when I see people struggling and they just don't know how or don't know the way to do anything about it. And they sit in it. And for me, when I see people, it's stress and anxiety is a huge one. In fact, this morning I was talking to some people and I said, most people, when I ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you sit? Most people say 6, 7, or 8. I'm like, that's not okay. That is absolutely not
No.
okay. But the fact that we as a society have embraced and wear stress and anxiety is sort of a badge of honor. But in the meantime, our health is taking a hit, our relationships, and a lot of times our careers, because of all those other things that start to unfold with it. It really breaks my heart that people just are so become afraid to really explore that and to change it. Because when you can get on the other side of it, totally different life. And really, when you have a taste of peace and clarity and freedom, there's nothing like it. And you actually you start seeking it more and more. So I think for me, it's just be willing to open the door to that and have just a little taste of it. And you'll realize that, yeah, I'm ready to make some changes and head toward that path.
Yeah. You bring up a really good point. I think we are told that success is defined by how many hours you work a week, how much money you make, hustle and grind. Oh, I'm more exhausted than you, so I win, right?
Yes.
When in reality, if we look at what companies are dealing with now, the employee or the team member they had before the pandemic is much different than what we have now. We've had people that are realizing my mental health is important. My wellness is important. What am I doing this for? So, your ability to take that step back and look at it and understand what is pulling your heart and what we were doing this. So let's talk a little bit about how was it that you found your purpose and reinvented yourself? And why was that important?
For me, it was a calling of my soul. It's a thing that I think people feel it. They just don't know that they're feeling it. They can't identify what that is. But for me, it was something different has to happen. And I got to do what I love. And to me, when you find your purpose and your passion, you're in love with what you're doing. And I tear up a little bit about it when I think about it, because I had a coach say to me once, when you're in your purpose and passion, you would actually be almost willing to die for it. You would be in a state of where you're like, if I can't have this, then nothing else will do. And that's the way I feel about my coaching. If someone came to me and said, Doree, you cannot coach the rest of your life, it would be devastating because it's that much. But to be able to find it, I had to really just take moments of, number one, I had to work with a coach. It wasn't something that I just sat down one day and went, okay, I'm going to be a coach. I had to look at my belief systems. And that was a big thing too. What do I believe? And when I started pulling that thread and started unraveling all of that stuff, I started realizing that all of that doesn't make up who I am. You talked about like the labels of who we are, and we say stress and anxiety and I'm a good hard worker and I work lots of hours. When you start pulling that stuff away and start really looking at what your heart is, what is your heart telling you? Then that's where you start to really see your purpose and your passion, when you can listen to your heart.
Yes. And I think the other thing too, and listeners, just so you know, Doree and I have worked together. So she's been one of my clients. She is one of my success stories that I love, just even reconnecting with her. We ended our engagement a few months ago. And one of the tools that we used for Doree to understand a little bit more about who she is was we looked into your human design. Yeah. And I think it was so fascinating to watch you go through that process of understanding who you really were designed to be. So talk a little bit about maybe the process that we used in reinventing yourself as far as working with, in my program, The Difference Is You, and how human design impacted that.
Wow. So it really was impactful for me because I could kind of really start looking at who I help. But the human working with you and being able to like really get down into who is it, what is it they need, what is it that I bring to the table, what is it they need, and being able how to learn to speak to them, because I think that was one of the issues that I was having before I started working with you was I wasn't talking their talk, but I wasn't talking their talk because I didn't know who I was talking to. I wanted to cast like a lot of entrepreneurs do. We want to cast this wide net and just go, I'm going to catch everybody in this net. And what you find out is you pull it back in and there's maybe one fish. But it's because you're not speaking. People aren't hearing you because you're not speaking directly to them. So that was one of the things working with you. But what was so crazy for me was the human design. When we did the human design and we looked at what we had done together with the story brand, all of that stuff, and look, it was exactly the same. This is what your people are saying to you. This is who you are, Doree. This is where it was so crazy. And that I'm a generator, and that, I have to also, what I learned about me as well, being an entrepreneur, is that sometimes I wasn't taking very good care of myself. But being the person that I am for my human design, I learned as an entrepreneur and who I am, I need to put little sprinkles of joy in my day throughout the day so that I can continue generating and continue having the energy that I need. It was so key for me to be able to know that, because otherwise I get into got to get it done mode and just crank. And then before I know it, I'm exhausted.
Yes. And that's one thing that I think was so amazing about using this tool and system of human design, to see how my design integrated with yours. We are both generators, but where we share this identity center, so we both are very strong in putting out energy about purpose. The part where you are pulling in energy for me is understanding how to communicate who you are, and like how to see that strategy of finding people and then how to communicate it with who you are, which are two of my strong points. And so we can use this human design system to understand who we need to attract, what they're looking for, and how to speak with them. Mm-hmm. So, Doree, I'm very curious. We talk as we begin to learn about ourselves. We become very aware of what we're good at and what just feels like we're in flow. So there's something called a zone of genius and a zone of excellence. A zone of excellence, as defined by Gay Hendricks in The Big Leap, is doing things that you're really good at, that you get paid for, people want to pay you for. But if you do it too much, you're on the road to burnout. A zone of genius is where you would do it and you lose all track of time. You could do it all day. And actually, in some cases, you would even do it and not get paid for it. What would I see you doing when you're working in your zone of genius?
I be in a creative space. That's one of my really, like, when I'm into it and I've got music going. Music is huge for me as part of being my creative process, doing that. But I will also say, when I'm spending time with my clients, it's one of those moments when you look down and the time has passed by, and you look down, and I know that I'm in it when I can, this sounds maybe a little crazy, but I can barely remember what I've said. And for me, that means that I am not talking from here. I've been talking from here and from my heart and from whatever the universe has been saying to me to say to someone else. And when I'm in that space, I could spend it all day. And, my husband even says to me, "Are you not tired? You've had 2 clients, back to back." And I'm coming out, and he's like, I'm energized. That was fantastic. That was amazing. I can tell a huge difference when I'm doing that versus something that, just it's not it.
That is. And 2, as generators, we're designed to do work we love. And so one way to become energized is to do things that you love, or things that bring you joy. And so, yes, I have the same thing. People are saying, you work too much. It's not work. It's play. I love it. And I love what I do. So doing that. So Doree, I think when we were working together, and I want to bring this out because I want people to understand that when you go through a reinvention process, it's not following a certain formula. And then when you get to the end of the finish line, like you're done, it is something that you continue to do. So when we started working together, you came to me and you had a certain type of client that you were looking to serve. And then when I connected with you just a couple of weeks ago, I found out there was someone that kind of came in at the end, and now that's transitioned. So talk a little bit about when we first started working together, who did you think you wanted to work with?
I really thought I wanted to work with women who were burned out, stressed out, looking at themselves going, who am I? And I had a couple of women who showed up while we were working together that was in that space. And then it was very interesting. I had a friend of mine reach out and said, my 20-year-old is struggling right now. He's stuck. He's stuck and he is not really making any progress forward. He quit college and he's depressed and he sees all his friends moving forward and here he is back and he doesn't know how to move forward. And I really want to meet with him. And I enjoyed working with him so much that's when you and I was like, what do you think about this? This is interesting. I'm finding this very fascinating. And before I knew it, I had another mother reach out to me and another mother and another mother. And it opened up this space of working with young adults. And the more I'm working with them, the more I'm seeing that, we talk about it as adults having stress, anxiety, depression, all of those different things. But this is on a whole different level with these young adults. And what I find so special as well is that a lot of them that are coming to me are so open and receptive that they are willing to take in whatever it is I'm offering as far as the different tools that I'm giving them to work with. They're just absorbing it. And I thought, oh, that's so amazing, because how awesome would that have been if someone had done that with me when I was their age? And so it's changed everything. It really is talking about passion and purpose. That is, it's meant everything to me, and it has changed. It changed. And, you continue to evolve and make changes as they come. But when something keeps coming up in front of you over and over again, you better pay attention. And that's what you and I were talking about. I was like, I think something's going on here. And once I embraced this, my voice about what I do and who I help, just all of a sudden, everything just flowed and just came out. And so when someone asks me what I do now, it just flows, and it's amazing work. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I could just see your face, like it lights up. And I think this is the point I want to bring out, is when you start working and you start looking at, okay, this is my ideal client. It doesn't mean you can't work with other people, but when someone else comes into your world, get curious about it. Don't put up a wall and say, no, I don't work with you. Get curious, because in Doree's case, and in your case, Doree, what we found is when that person came up, I was like, I leaned in a little bit to that, because there is a reason this person is coming to you, that they see something. And I think what's so fascinating of what you're doing now, and, immediately we started classifying this as a failure to launch situation, right? Remember the movie Failure to Launch? But what it is you have a parent who may see their child struggle. Now, no parent wants to see their child struggle, and they know they need some assistance and some support, and the parent is not always the person to give that. But we also see an adult child who is also struggling. They know the expectations of society, their parents, their friends. They need help, but you almost get into a two-sided marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. You may have to intrigue the parent to say, hey, this is what I do. But I think the bigger sell when a parent would come to you would be the idea of introducing this to the young adult that, hey, I can help you, and this is something that you could possibly need. Talk to me a little bit about, are young adults coming to you? Are parents coming to you? And how do you navigate that tension between that?
It's interesting that you say that, because in the beginning it was adults. It was the parents coming to me. They would see something I posted, or referrals. A lot of referrals come in, and I talk to the parent. I spend as much time in the beginning with the parent as I do with the young adult. Whatever time it takes to get to know the parent, because listen, they're not going to hand their child over to me. And I say child, but they're not going to hand their young adult over to me and as a referral until they know who I am. And so I spend the time with them first and really get to know what's going on from their opinion. And a lot of them are hurting because they see their children hurting and they want to do something about it, but they just don't know what to do. And let's be honest, I have stepchildren. I know that I can give advice all day long, but because I'm in a parental type of figure, they're not going to listen normally to what any of us have to say. And in fact, if they're anything like I was, they'll do the exact opposite. So it's getting to know the parents. And then once that door is open, really being able to communicate with a young adult, no judgment, and being able to say, what's going on? Let's talk about this and let's figure it out. So that's the way it started in the beginning. But now that I'm talking more about what I do, I've actually had a couple of people are starting to come up to me that are in their 20s when they hear me talking about what I do, whether it's in a networking event. There's young entrepreneurs as well, and they're hearing me. They're like, I need help. I'm struggling with some things, and I need help. And so it's just really opened up a different dynamic. But yeah, it definitely has mostly been the parent that comes forward first, and then working to hear what the child has to say. And then, it's opened up, and it's really incredible.
Yeah. And I think the thing with young adults, what we don't realize is, when we were coming up, many of us did not have social media in the way that these individuals do. There's such pressure. There's, I've noticed there's even a glamorization of, I have anxiety, and do I have more anxiety than you, right? Oh, my boss called me in and my appointment's at 10 o'clock, and they go on social media about how anxious they are. So where in professional circles, it might be, look how exhausted I am, how much I'm working. I think for a lot of this generation, it's, look how anxious I am. Look how terrible my life is. Yeah. But they don't have an escape net because everyone around them is talking this vernacular about being anxious. And just hearing how anxious other people are makes you anxious, makes you feel like you need to be anxious.
Yes.
So how do you get out? How do you get out of that, right? So tell me about working with young adults, how that might be different than working with professional advanced career adults.
I will say one thing that's really, I find kind of cool is that we as adults, we've heard a lot of different things, right? We've heard about all the different, I'm going to use the word modalities, but you've heard of yoga and breathing and breath work and meditation and all of those different things, so when you're talking to an adult about it, it's exploring the different avenues of using some of these techniques they may have heard and dispelling a lot of myths around different things. When you're working with a young adult, it's all new. This is all new information for them. And I kind of enjoy that even more because I'm teaching. So it's not just dispelling myths and this is what this is what I recommend you do. This is more of like, let me teach you. Let me show you and talk to you and teach you. Like one of the big things I talk about with my young adults is acceptance and how to be in acceptance of that exact moment of who you are and who other people are. And the look in their face when they're like, what do you mean I accept my sister for being this way? It's, you have no control over it. And if you can let go of that, then a certain peace comes about. And when you're talking to an adult about acceptance, it's a little bit more difficult because they're going to bring in all the 100,001 reasons why they shouldn't be, why their sister is this way. So it becomes more of just a teaching experience rather than just let's talk about different ways to do it. It's amazing.
Yeah. And what I hear in that is, let's explore before we judge. Let's look at, okay, can you really control that person? And if you can't control them, let's say this is the way they are. How do you then negotiate with them? How do you interact with them? How do you continue to love them? And I think the world, Doree, could use what you're dishing out here, because if you look at where the world is now, if you look at the news, if you look at social media, if you look at how people speak to each other, we have come to a place of such divisiveness that if you're not like me, you must be wrong, you are bad. And a lot of it is driven by fear of, if you're not like me, then what does that say about me? Versus being curious and open.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's when you can get in that, the terminology I use, and I did not make this up, but I love it, is I can only control what's in my hula hoop. And so imagine a hula hoop, that's all that I can control. And I know that one of the things for me that was a big deal for so long was I tried to control people, places, and things. And it was exhausting. And the moment you realize that you can't control that, okay, and now I can look at you and go, okay, we may have grown up in different, had different backgrounds. You see the world differently, even though you and I are very similar. You still see the world from different lens than I do. And if I can accept the fact that, you've been through what you've been through, I've been through what I've been through. And we have to always remember too, that we don't know what people have been through. Sometimes we are so quick to pass judgment on people because they say something mean to us, or they unintentionally or intentionally hurt our feelings. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And that is a key part of acceptance, is going, I don't need to know. All I know is that you are you, and I don't need to know what's going on. If you want to share it with me, that's great. But if you don't, I don't need to know. I know that maybe you did hurt my feelings, and I can address that if I want to. And then I leave it on the table, and I just say that's now that's done, and I move on, and not let it just stay with me and haunt me for however long.
Yeah. Such great thoughts. Such great thoughts. And I know you are a speaker. I know that you do this transformational coaching. So for anyone listening, what would be the best way for people to reach you?
And they can reach me on my website. It's www.therealdoreeo.com. That is the name of my company. It is because, I'm exploring, I'm finding who I really am. And it's something that we all are doing. So therealdoreeo.com if you want to reach me. Yep.
All right. And we'll make sure that we put that in the show notes. And you do have an offer for our listeners as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have openings for that consultation that I was talking about. It's totally free. It is my gift to you. If you want to just talk about what's going on, sometimes I find that we start solving it within that hour. But yeah, it's totally complimentary, and would love to hear from people.
Yes. And folks, if you are at least the least bit interested about what Doree's doing, please take her up on that. She is a dynamic coach. She is just such an amazing person. I've had a chance to work with her for quite some time, and I love the experience of being able to do that. So again, we see that reinvention can happen at any time, and it may be at a life stage, it may be at a career transition, but when you feel the pull on your heart, that maybe something needs to change, it is definitely worth exploring. So today I want to remind you that I hope you got what you needed, but I want to remind you that go chase your passion, connect it to your purpose, and you can show up as a personal brand of integrity, because that's the key to living a life of so much more on the way to your legendary self. Doree, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.